guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from Mexico, Spanish language English subs, released in the year 2015, directed by Diego Cohen, and this film is called Honeymoon. So Honeymoon is about a very deranged man who longs to be loved. He sees everyone else being together and happy, and he wants that happiness. So he believes he's found his match when he comes across this very beautiful woman. She's athletic and she already has a boyfriend, and this is the problem. So he doesn't really see it as too much of an obstacle because he's basically going to force her to love him. So one day he kidnaps her and he keeps her hostage inside his house, and he does horrible things to her every time she declines his advances. So the more she struggles, the more harsh the punishments are going to get, until the realization from her is that she is going to be killed if she doesn't do something about it. So it's going to turn into a game of cat and mouse, and this woman's going to have to try and outsmart her captor, and whether or not she can is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Honeymoon. With Mexican cinema, is definitely hit and miss. There are some very good ones, but unfortunately there are some fairly mediocre ones. And I will say that Honeymoon is a mediocre film, is because I don't think it has the ability to be as in-depth as it really wants to be, and as in-depth as it needs to be for this sort of film to work. Now the movie does have a very interesting idea. The movie does depict romance, and how the difference between romance and lust, and the difference between love and basically you can't necessarily force someone to love you, and how chaotic it can be when you actually try and force someone to love you. You feel as though, okay, this is not going to end happy, it's because love is a natural thing, and how dangerous it can be when someone who doesn't understand love tries to enforce it. And another movie did the same thing called Pet, and I thought Pet did it a little bit better, is because that was a little bit more in depth and it felt like a little bit more of a polished piece. But that movie, once again, it depicted how dangerous it can be when someone who wants to be have company and who wants to fall in love, they don't understand it. So this movie does have that interesting tale of a very twisted romance, and I thought at the start of the movie it does promise something fairly entertaining, but unfortunately, as I said, there's just not enough depth in there to really carry it over the line. Now I will say the cinematography was fairly well done, and there was also some really shocking acts of violence, so it's really going to appeal to the more seasoned hardcore horror fan. But unfortunately with the violence, there's not enough violence in this film to make it memorable as a gore movie, and there's not enough depth in the film to make it a psychological horror film. So the movie wants to be shocking and it wants to be psychological. It is shocking, but unfortunately, as far as a horror movie is concerned, it felt very empty. It felt like a Mexican soap opera slash horror film, in that the characters really weren't well written. I thought that the script was very mediocre. It doesn't allow these actors to really flesh out their characters. It felt very wooden in everything, whether it's the score. I thought the score and the music was very much out of place, and the whole film feels as though it's a very strange experience, in that it just doesn't feel right. The movie wants to be something that it can't be. It's because it doesn't realise what it takes to actually make a film of this nature as shocking as it wants to be, in that whether it's got some very strange music that really lightens the mood when it really wants to be dark, and there are lines of dialogue that really kind of contradict the overall mood that specific scene has. So you've got a lot of situations where you just feel as though you're saying to yourself, well, I know what the director wants me to feel, but the way he's done it, it doesn't make me feel that particular emotion. And so the movie just felt like it was a little bit out of its depth. It felt like it didn't really know exactly how to really push that punch that the movie desperately wants. And so you've got some moments, as I said, that the violence is very shocking. I like the fact that it does push that boundary, and it does show you the violence against women, which is taboo. Now obviously violence against women is a bad thing, but violence against anybody is a bad thing. But when it comes to women and children, a lot of movies don't tend to show graphic violence, whereas in this film it does have some pretty graphic sexual violence, and it does have some common violence that does hit home very hard, but there's just not enough of that to really carry it as just a straight out gore film or a straight out shock film. And as I said, when you don't have the violence, you can't get invested as much as the director wants you to, is because the script doesn't really allow these characters to blossom, and it just feels empty. It feels like a Mexican soap opera in some instances, and you just feel as though the movie really needed better characters for this film to work, is because when the violence happens, you feel, okay, I'm not really connecting to this woman as though she could be my friend or family member or my wife or my neighbour. You just feel as though, okay, it's just an object in order to inflict some shocking moments of violence, but but nothing else. And so when you've got a film like that, unfortunately it does run out of steam quite quickly. It's only about 90 odd minutes, if memory serves me right, but it felt like it was a little bit longer than that because I checked out well before the end. The end is very shocking, but unfortunately it's not enough to save this film as a straight out gore shock film, and it's not good enough to carry it through as a psychological horror film. But it does have very interesting ideas, but unfortunately that idea of twisted love isn't complemented by a solid enough story, so you kind of lose it in translation. So overall for Honeymoon, it's not coming recommended. I'm only going to give it 1.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching movies, and I'll see you later.